Welcome to the Frictionless Innkeeper podcast. Coming right up, fresh tips and insights from lodging professionals aimed at helping you improve your business. Our podcast is brought to you by the Frictionless Guest App, which helps improve your guest stay without adding more to your day. Learn how at frictionlessguest.com. All right, Steve. So here we are. We have another Frictionless Innkeeper podcast interview today. And this one's really interesting. We're speaking with Paul Wegert, who is the CEO at Boutique Hotel Professionals, and Jenifer Neptune, who is the Chief Visionary Officer, and she's also a co-founder at Boutique Hotel Professionals. Right. This one's really interesting. They are a management company that specializes in boutique hotels, luxury travel experiences, etc. We've never really spoken with an organization in the boutique realm on this level, and great people and super smart. This was a good one, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of information about kind of boutique thing. And yeah, I think it applies whether you're an independent innkeeper, bed and breakfast owner in, larger or smaller boutique hotel, larger boutique hotels. I mean, that's part of what I took out of this is that what's common is in the boutique world is this level of service, this idea of, kind of the culture of the service, the culture of the place that's providing the service. There's a mindset there that, you really focus on, even in a touchless world. I want to say high touch, it used to be called. I don't know what it's going to be called after COVID here, but hands-on in terms of appropriate level of interaction, whether that's, from a distance or not, doesn't really matter. And then the other part was experience, meaning the guest experience being front and center, all facets of the stay or the travel experience on the property. If the property has restaurants, whatever, all of that, as well as off property, curating those experiences, and which is obviously what we're about. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's something there for everybody in terms of what they talk about. And, I think the majority of it was talking about how they are experienced in terms of the whole boutique. I mean, they're A to Z, right? They do it all in terms of being able to take a place and transforming it into a boutique property, even if it maybe has a lot of elements of that now currently, but they also manage everything. And I think their value proposition is that they do that. So you're getting similar to a brand-like management approach that's disciplined, but it's also very kind of loose in that you're not bound by the brand, that they keep the unique mindset, the unique experience mindset with what they provide. There's a lot of latitude. They're not tied down by kind of the brand restrictions, and that way they're able to provide a unique guest experience, I think. So it's cool.
Yeah, I agree. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's really, that was a key theme all throughout, was really about the unique guest experience. And with that, I think that's a perfect segue to kick it over to the podcast. So we hope you enjoy this episode of the Frictionless Innkeeper podcast with Paul Wegert and Jenifer Neptune from Boutique Hotel Professionals. Okay, and Jenifer and Paul, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Frictionless Innkeeper podcast today. And we also have Steve Short here as always. How you all doing?
Oh, doing great. Thank you so much for having us on.
Absolutely. Hey, Paul, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. Steve, how you doing?
I'm fine as usual, Matt. Thank you.
As always. That's great. Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us. And let's actually kick it off because we'd love to hear more about your backgrounds, which could lead into more of a deeper discussion about your offerings with Boutique Hotel Professionals. So perhaps we'll start with Paul. Would love to hear about your background.
All right. Well, I've been in this business 40 years. And, I started when I was 15 years old as a bellman and came up, once I got hooked into it, basically went through the accounting side of it as corporate internal auditor with the Richfield Hotel Group, which is 180 hotels. Found out that the next move was the assistant controller, corporate controller, and that guy was like 40 years old. I said, well, it's going to take 25 more years of traveling 5 days a week, so I can't do that. So at that point, I jumped over into the food and beverage realm of it, general manager realm. ran several hotels throughout my career in different areas, and then regional positions. And then now I'm the CEO and co-founder of Boutique Hotel Professionals. I also still managing director of the Inn of St. John's, which is our flagship property for Boutique Hotel Professionals. And it's located in Plymouth, Michigan, right outside Detroit, halfway between basically Detroit or Ann Arbor. So it's a great industry, and there's not, it's funny. It's 365 days a year, 24/7. And I always laugh. I've told this joke several times before, but some take it the right way, some don't. But it's the only legal business that you're allowed to have beds and alcohol under the same roof. So.
That's hilarious. I've never heard that one before. Yes.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate your background there. And Jenifer, would love to hear more about your background too.
Well, I've been in marketing for about 25 years now, and I used to do a lot of marketing for OEMs and, a lot of engineering companies, but I always had a few boutique product lines that I was helping to promote and get out there. And then I delved into the hospitality sector and never looked back. It's just such a fun industry to be a part of, and, discovering all of the different possibilities and the strategies. And I just absolutely love it. I love everything about the boutique luxury industry.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Great insights there. And let's jump right in. I know Steve will jump in at some point too, but tell us about Boutique Hotel Professionals. We came across you all, I think it was a press release that we found there maybe a month ago or so, and it certainly caught our attention. We hadn't seen a service quite like this, especially focused really on boutique hotel management. But I'll stop talking and let you all tell us more about this, and maybe we'll start with Paul.
Okay. Well, I've never liked franchises. I call them cookie cutters, and they're, whether it's a Marriott, Sheraton, IHG, Hilton, it doesn't matter to me. And you can see now it's kind of interesting because a lot of the big flags are now moving towards type of boutique type properties. But, when you're at a boutique property, when Jenifer and I co-founded this and started this, part of our vision was not to bring flags into the program because, when the whole thing with our company is creating experiences versus just a guest room stay. And I guess that's the thing is that we want every guest to remember their stay here. And it's like, there's little things that you can do, and I'm sure we'll get into that, but the whole vision is to take properties that are, I'm not going to say struggling, but take properties that are just kind of floundering where it's only can do so much. We're talking to one client right now about a flagged hotel and turning it into an independent hotel, because at some points, the guest says, okay, I'm willing to pay $170 for whatever the brand is, whether it's a Marriott or whatever, right? And I'm not picking on any brands for any reason, but let's just say you have in your head, okay, a Sheraton hotel is worth $179 to me in that market. We could pull the flag off of that, throw a boutique and do something fun with it. And in the same time, you can raise $20, $30, $50 ADR. That happened here. It's interesting. The Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Dearborn was during the post 9/11, and it was hard for any traveler to sit there and say, okay, well, boss, here's my expense report for staying at the Ritz-Carlton, and it was like $229, and they're like, you can't stay at the Ritz-Carlton. What are you crazy? Everybody's struggling. So they pulled the flag off of that and made it the Henry Hotel, and they raised the rates $20, $30, and it's like all of a sudden you give your boss an expense report for the Henry Hotel, and he's like, oh, okay, that's all right. So, it is interesting how there's just this perception that a Holiday Inn Express is worth this, a Hilton Garden Inn is worth this, a Sheraton's worth this, a Marriott's worth this. So our vision is go out to those properties that they don't know what they're going to do because, like I said, they hit that point where they're like, okay, we're stuck here. And what do we do? And, you can take our company as a management group and, we do the full boat accounting and everything else, and, it's turnkey. And when you allow that to happen, then you don't really have the benefits that you're paying these franchises, and they can come out and say we're going to give you 8% franchise fees, but by the time you get everything else in, it's 12, 13, 14, 15%. So, our vision is, okay, we can pull that off, bring that money straight to the bottom line for the ownership, and create a fun luxury feel boutique experience, I guess is how I call it. So I'll be quiet for a second, let Jenifer jump in, and I think I give her one or two things left to talk about. So.
Sure, Jenifer, I'd love to hear your take.
Well, in the boutique industry, what we really like about it is that each property has the ability to be unique in its local community. And we're finding that more and more travelers are looking for not just a bed, but, a whole experience, like Paul mentioned. And that also means bringing in the local community aspects. So if there's a bakery that's local to that state, or if there's, farmers markets and, things like that, bringing all that experience in, it's a real possibility with the boutique industry. The other thing is that you have the opportunity to really define the look and feel of all of your marketing and your branding and the way that the whole experience is for your customers. Because if you've got a flag, the flag basically says, this is how the room is going to look. And then they throw a pip at you and say, this is how the room is going to look now. And they'll tell you, we've changed the brand, we've changed, all of this. But it's not something that you have any control over in your local market. So basically, when a customer comes in to a flag, they know it's going to be consistent from place to place. So if they're looking for that consistency, that's one thing. But a lot of these travelers are looking for more than, that, consistent look and feel. Oh, yes, I'm at another Holiday Inn. Oh, yes, I'm at another Marriott. They're looking for something that is like, wow, this is a unique lobby. Wow. Oh my gosh, I love this bar setup here. Or, it's taking a totally different approach to the hotels and understanding that the hotel is part of the overall experience rather than, just the stopping ground.
It's a good point when I think of franchises. I mean, the whole idea behind it was consistency, like McDonald's, consistency of that product. You go to McDonald's in California versus on the East Coast, doesn't matter, right? The same Big Mac. And that's fine if that's what you're looking for. But there's nothing unique about that in whether it's in California or, East Coast or whatever, once you've done it a few times anyway. So, yeah, I mean, I think unless you're maybe a business traveler who's just looking for a place to sleep so they can get up and go to the next business meeting and not have to worry about whether they slept well or something, and looking to save money or whatever, that's one thing. But I think most travelers, and even if I was traveling for business, I'd still feel like I want to stay in a place that's kind of unique and interesting. Why not? I'm here.
And the part of our vision is to enable these independent properties to have the same sort of back-end infrastructure that the flags have. So, but they, it's like the flags are so expensive, and a lot of these independent hotels can't afford to have, all of the, they just don't have the buying power. They just don't have, the ability to offer the same level of products and, amenities and things like that. What we can do is, because we have multiple arrangements with vendors, everyone from Peloton and Marriott Food and, all of those other components, we can make those things affordable to our clients.
Okay.
Paul,
so now
you should elaborate on that, actually.
Well, I think that, Steve, you brought up a good point. And part of the attractiveness to banks with the flags in the previous era, I say, is that investors wanted to go out and say, okay, we're going to have 10 Comfort Inns or 10 Holiday Inn Expresses or 10 Hilton Garden Inns. And you had an idea exactly what those were going to run from a revenue standpoint, a profit standpoint. And you could say, okay, why is the hotel in Boston doing this when the one in wherever the Hartford is doing this? And it's like, you could trim them down. And it's like, you kind of have an idea as to what the amenities are, what the linens are, from vacuum cleaners to whatever. And so you kind of, with the franchises, you have an idea, okay, these properties are going to run 38 to 40% NOI. And that's pretty consistent. So you could have a portfolio of 15 or 20 hotels, and you can go to a bank saying, this is what the average is. So it's very easy to get grant or funding from banks for that. And that was really the attractiveness to investors, that they could sit there and get the bank to buy into it very quickly with the flag on it. So, the programs that Jenifer's talking about, where you approve for the Hilton preferred discounting and things like that, that allow us to get these different options. But at the same time, with boutique, you're changing out, like you're using L'Occitane, you're using Molten Brown, shampoos, and you're not just going to get the little XYZ flagship shampoo that none of us like, but at the same time, you've given the expectation to an owner saying this is the profit level you're going to run, but you're only going to get back to the ADR. You're only going to get X ADR out of that property. Where with the boutique, you could have like I said, you could have a $30, $40, $50 swing in ADR, which allows you to spend an extra $5 on a customized amenity versus where our thing is, it's like we were talking to somebody, designer the other day. We were talking about hair drying. And it's like we were discussing having a drawer in the new bathroom vanity or not having the drawer. And it's like, okay, well, you're going to spend, $100 for a drawer. So why don't we do something cool with a really customized vanity? Again, not allowed by franchise. But we're going to take that extra money. We're going to buy a Dyson hair dryer. Sounds just like, okay, whoop-dee. Well, it is a whoop-dee because it's like, tell me the last time you went to a hotel that you had a Dyson hair dryer. And it's like, you could sit there and you're not going to walk out of the hotel and say, wow, this hotel had a drawer. No, this hotel had a hair dryer or a Dyson hair dryer. And it's the same thing. It's like, the one thing that blows me away in the negative standpoint is the Keurig coffee machines. I hate Keurig coffee machines. It's that clear. I don't want to go and get a Keurig coffee machine at a hotel for several reasons. I can buy Keurig at Target or at the grocery store, everything else. But at the same time, you've got 8 out of 10 of your guests have a Keurig at home. So what do? They go and take out the 8 capsules that you left in the room. They take them all home with them. And it's like, but at the same time, so we look at Nespresso, and Nespresso is a much better coffee maker. It's a much better coffee. But in the meantime, you can leave, 3, 4, 5 capsules of Nespresso. Maybe that 1 out of 10 guests is going to take it home with them. Maybe they won't, who knows? But again, it's like you walk into a room and all of a sudden, the first time we experienced an espresso, I was like, this is great coffee. I mean, it is great coffee. But it's the same price as Keurig. But the flags have all said, we're going to put Keurigs in every hotel because this is what Steve uses at home. This is what Matt uses at home.
But, expanding on that, though, the thing is that a lot of these boutique properties don't feel that they can offer this level of amenities. But because we can pool these resources and have a stronger buying power, we're able to bring that to the table for them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, Jenifer mentioned something about, and I want to get into a little bit more about what defines kind of a boutique hotel or property and what, whether it's potential to become one that you might shift them into that or whatever. But first, Jenifer, you mentioned the community aspect, which is a big thing for us at Frictionless, and experience and having kind of the local unique thing happening. So what type of stuff do you all do in terms of pulling in community or sending maybe guests out to places that are kind of unique in the community?
Well, we've been working on these relationships with, the different producers, the farmers, and I mentioned a bakery for years. Zingerman's is the big name in Michigan. And so we've had Zingerman's in the restaurant and in the offerings, and we try to find those little small niche, products, and they're actually boutique product lines, if you want to consider it that. And so they're the jelly makers, the salsa makers, all of those types of ingredients that we can, say, hey, this is a Michigan experience, but we're also supporting the local community. So it goes both ways, so while we're offering this to our guests, we're also creating opportunities locally.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's pretty cool. Good. So boutique hotels, what does that mean? What does that mean to you all?
Well, to me, a boutique hotel is anything that doesn't have a flag, that offers a unique type of experience. So, it doesn't matter if it's a 15-room bed and breakfast or if it's, 700 room, big, huge property. It's how the property is handled. Like, it's the overall, idea of creating this unique experience for people so that when they're traveling, they're not walking into just an ordinary stay. And, in some of the properties that we've seen that consider themselves boutique are really not what I would qualify as boutique, because they're just taking a flag and removing it. And so
we have dealt with a couple of investors in that realm, Steve, that, they're like, they just like Jenifer said, they were going to pull the flag off. And I'm like, okay, what else are you going to do? you still got, how are you going to make it different? And they're like, well, I don't need to. I just changed the name. It's, Steve's Resort. That becomes a boutique property. But, we've been to the several conferences throughout the States, and that is probably, BLLA is a big organization. And even at their conferences, it's like, what is the definition of boutique? And, everybody, when you say boutique, you think, okay, that's like Jenifer said, it's a 15, 20, 50 room hotel. And it's not. I mean, you look at the Inn of St. John's and we're a 118 room hotel, but we got 42,000 square feet of meeting space. So, if you see that, you're like going, how is this boutique? But it is because of the culture that we provide and the experiences that we do. And it's like, but you have to make a difference. You can't just be, oh, we're boutique and that's it.
Well, you look at like the O Hotel, and it used to be a Ritz, and they transformed it into the O Hotel. It's in West Palm, and it's absolutely, and it's amazing what they did with it.
And that's probably a 350 room hotel down in Manapulon, Florida.
They use Jonathan Adler as their designer for all the rooms. They have a very, just kind of a interesting, eclectic sort of look. They changed their lobby from very traditional and kind of formal during the day. They transform it at night through their lighting and their music, and it just makes it into this like really cool lounge. I mean, there's just a lot of little things that they've done that are, it's like somebody would say, oh, that's way too big to be a boutique, but it absolutely is a boutique.
Interesting. And so Paul said it was talking about culture and experience. So obviously the people that are managing and providing the service from the top down, that's hugely important. What you just mentioned, Jenifer, was more like the space. I mean, the reality is that if I've got maybe an elementary school from the 60s, you're probably not going to be able to transform that space into something unique. Whereas, just thinking about something I've seen more recently, like an old jailhouse in Galena, Illinois, right? I don't know, I think 15 rooms, I don't know how many rooms, fairly large, but that's kind of a unique space that was transformed into a boutique property. So how is that
whole area is really a boutique deal. I mean, that's a good example, because Galena, you just have this, every shop and store and everything in that area is very boutique-y.
Yeah. So it's so many different things. I don't want it to sound like it's simple, because I'm sure it's not. But you've got to, start with the place, the space first, right? Because that's the reality, is it's got to be unique. And you can't, like Paul says, you can't just change the flag. And it seems like it's the space as well as the culture and the experience, right?
I think that it's a combination of the ownership and the managers that are put in place and the property. Because if you have the wrong general manager overseeing the property, they're not going to be able to, just say, oh, hey, wow, let's do this. Let's try this, because they're not used to that. They're used to following, like if you take someone who's always been a part of a flag, they're used to following a rule book or guidebook that they're given from the flag. This is what you do. This is how you do it. And they actually don't have a lot of latitude with their properties to really make change. Everything that they're allowed to do is within like a certain constrained boundary. With the boutique, if you've got the right manager and you've got the right management company working with the ownership, you can really transform a property. And I don't know how you feel, Paul, about the spaces. We've seen some amazing transformations. Even talk about like the retreat center at the Inn of St. John's and how you're transforming that.
Well, one thing I want to touch base on before I forget, though, and I think Steve, is that there's a fine line as to bed and breakfast and boutique. And I think that everybody thinks a bed and breakfast is a boutique, and I don't think of it as a bed and breakfast as a boutique at all, because I think they're two different worlds completely. But I think people, they think of a 15-room bed and breakfast or an 8-room bed and breakfast as boutique-y, and to me, they're not. I've been to several bed and breakfast properties, and that's not the experience that I would classify as boutique. That's more of a bed and breakfast, period. You've got the mom and pop and whoever, or the family's running it, and there is a niche for that business, but I do see constantly people referring to bed and breakfast as boutique. And I really think that there's a totally different concept there altogether. I guess a lot of it has to do with the space in the sense that, again, you're creating an experience where if you're in Portland, Maine, you're not going to walk in and see the property rooms look like they're New York City lofts, and vice versa. If you're in New York City, you're not going to walk in a room and think that you're on Mackinac Island. So you're creating that local atmosphere but it's not just the space, it's also it's the ability, and it goes back to what Jenifer was saying on having the right manager, because if you can't create the sense of, you go to these big, I call them big boxes. You go to a big box and you're just a number. And now you go to these boxes and, it's like you're checking in on your phone. There's a very successful hotel down in Nashville that is 300-room hotel that's, before COVID, running 100% occupancy during the week with 2 desk clerks, and one of them's out fluffing the pillows and walking around the lobby because there's nothing to do because everybody's checking in on their phone and they're doing express checkout and leave. And and it's a great hotel. It's a clean hotel, and there's nothing wrong with the hotel, but it's not an experience. It's a place to go put your head down and get up in the morning and leave. And, that's the one thing that we don't want you just to walk in, check and check out. We want you to feel like you had an adventure while you were here and that you remember something. And it doesn't just stop with the room. It's also it's the restaurant. It's creating, going back to Zingerman's, is very well known in Detroit Metro, where you can sit there and people come out and say, why is this Zingerman's whatever on the Zingerman's cheese on the menu? It's like, well, because some of them will get it and some of them won't. But it's like, then you have a talking point with the server to explain what they are and who they are. But you walk this tight line where you've got to be out there with the guests. You got to be talking to the guests. And I think, that's one of the challenges is a lot of the people in our industry, they don't want that. But it's not just the hotel, it's the restaurant manager that doesn't want to go up and the last thing in the restaurant, how's your dinner doing? Oh man, I know we got problems in the kitchen. I'd just rather just stay quiet. I don't want to go talk to that guy. But instead, you turn it around and you have fun with it. And the COVID has kind of even drawn that wedge into that even more, because now you have people saying, well, I don't feel comfortable going over talking to Steve. So now you're walking this tight line with your employees, because you can't say, well, I need you, Matt, to go talk to Steve and make sure he's enjoying his dinner. And it's like, well, I don't feel comfortable because of COVID, blah, 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 blah. So
I don't want to talk to Matt anyway. So
yeah, exactly.
And the other thing that COVID has done on that regard, and it's not necessarily just COVID, but it's all of the new unemployment rules that are out there, the things that are going on in that realm. You don't even have employees that are able to go over and talk, because they, if you do have employees working, they're so short-handed that it's like finding the time to actually go over and communicate with the guests is a challenge right now. And so that's one of the things that, I think is going to stay for a while from COVID, just because I think that, there's a lot of people that now have this mentality of like, I really don't need to work, or I don't want to work. And, and then finding people that are willing to go the extra mile at work and talk and engage in guests, it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I think it's always a challenge to find good service people. It's so much of soft skill sort of mindset. Even if they need to be trained, you've got to start with that. And yeah, I experienced this locally at one of my favorite Indian places that reopened, and I know the owners, and I'd been in a couple weeks back, and food was great, but the service was not very good. He texted me afterward, and last night when I followed up, and I said, I'm not the one to give you the review right now, because I said, everything's good food-wise, but the service is bad. And we went back and forth, and that's basically what he said is, I've got talented people that, I'd like to be bringing back, but they're getting help right now. They don't need to work. Yep. So hopefully, I don't know when hopefully it's going to change soon. So now talk about the services that you all provide. Go into that in a little bit more detail in terms of, so I don't know if it would help to take a scenario, but I own a property that maybe it's got a flag or whatever, but I'm not really happy with the way things are going. And I want to make a change. And the idea of a boutique property sounds interesting. Sure, everybody wants to get paid more per room, whatever. So I come to boutique hotel professionals and I say, hey, I've got this property. What is it? I know it's probably maybe an a la carte of things you can do, but I think it's also the full menu, right? So talk about what you might do for a prospective client.
Well, we prefer not to do a la carte. So we go in, we want to do the full boat. By that, I mean, we're doing the marketing. We've got an in-house marketing company, Inspired Pineapple. We'll do the full boat, payroll, benefits, health benefits, medical, dental, vision, life, disability. We do the full back of the house accounting systems, full P&Ls, and then we've got a director of loss prevention. We have access to basically every nook and cranny that needs to be covered, we'll cover it. And then, but where ours is a little bit different than the normal is we don't just do a percentage of revenue. Several management companies just do a flat percentage of revenue, period. My problem with that is that you're not, you can have a flat percentage of revenue, but there's nothing really holding my feet to the fire to perform. And, it's like, I want to get paid, I meaning BHP. Boutique Hotel Professionals wants to be paid, but we want to earn our money. So if we change your property to a boutique property, we increase the revenues, we do this, we increase the profitabilities net, then I don't want just a piece of revenue. I want a piece of what you are sharing also. So I think, that allows us to go with a little bit lower base fee, or some of them will do a percent of revenue. Some you can't do a percent of revenue, especially during COVID, because there's so many properties that are out there not making any revenue. So you're not going to walk in and you can't, if you have no revenue, you're getting, you're getting 5% of nothing. It's still nothing. So there is a base fee that has to be, hit that's based on the needs of the property. And, different properties have different challenges as to owner involvement or what the market's doing, or, is there a large renovation that's going to be done? So that's where I don't want to sit here and just have you write me a check just because we kept your business open. We'll earn our check. And Jenifer, you might want to.
Well, the other thing that I'd like to add to that is that the reason we want it all under our roof is because we don't like the blame game. We want to be responsible for that property and to really be able to channel our resources to make that property the best boutique hotel it can possibly be. And we feel like that's best done if we have our hand and our team running that show.
So let's say that my property is not up to snuff. I mean, obviously you need to make some changes other than changing the flag if there is one, like you were saying. So do we agree upon, like you would come in and say, well, here's what we suggest needs to be done, whether it's down to the espresso machine level or at some level, right? So, hey, you're going to have to, because you're not willing to try to transform something without a budget. So you have to kind of figure out how do I get from where I am now to where I think it should be as a reasonable boutique property. And in order to do that, it's going to cost X number of dollars. And then on top of it, I'm going to transform the restaurant, so that the offerings are more in line with local or what the feel of this place needs to be and the guests and that sort of thing. So do you kind of come in, make those suggestions, agree upon kind of that upfront capital sort of budget, and then also work out all the details and say, hey, we'll do it all, marketing, all that stuff?
So first of all, not every property has to be completely transformed.
Right.
So there's small things that you can do that are actually not terribly expensive that can really be transformative. So it depends on, how, what the situation is. And it's hard to just say blanket, this is how we would approach this, because it really depends on what has been put into that property over the years, like what needs to be done. The difference is that if you're going to go with a flag or switch flags, they're going to come in and say, these renovations have to be done, and they cram it down your throat. Right. We don't do that. What we basically do is look at things that can give you immediate return on investment, and then other things down the road that can be added and integrated to really create and curate that boutique hotel experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
And all those things, and Steve, some of that is You could have a 1 year, a 5 year, or 10-year plan. Obviously, as we prove ourselves and prove that it works, then we go to phase 2 or phase 3 or phase 4. Some investors are saying, okay, I'm ready to dump $30 million into this property, and this is where we're going to go. We're going to get there as fast as we can. Then we work out backwards as to, how do you work around, in Michigan, you have to work around winter and things like that. But we have a very great relationship with Clear on Black, which is a design group based out of California, multiple awards that they've won throughout their career. And they do an incredible job just transforming, giving us 2 or 3 different recommendations. We look at, pick one, and then we go. We've got a great relationship with Hatch Purchasing out of Seattle. Again, that goes back to if you have the time to wait and you have a 12-month window before you're going to do this, you can save a lot of money by bringing furniture in from overseas. But if you say, I want this done in 3 to 6 months, you're going to do it locally or you're going to do it in the States. You have some owners that don't want anything brought in from out of the country. They want everything made in the United States. So, there's always, you got to weigh that and say, okay, here's the cost of that. It's going to be $6 million we do it this way. It's going to be $8 million we do it this way.
Well, and the other thing about that, though, is that we're not going to steer our clients in a direction that's going to make it so they won't get that return on investment. We will look at a property and say, hey, this is what your per room rate, this is what you need to spend per key. This is, you don't want to go over this, because if you go over this, you're going to exactly.
Yeah.
And, and there's some properties that we've seen that have made that mistake. They go in and my wife loves this, this, and this. So we got to have this in the room. Well, it's not about your wife. It's about making this boutique hotel property successful. And you've got to look at some of the parameters that you're putting in place have to consider your return on investment.
And we're looking at an expansion here, and this property is built back in the 30s, and it has all the red barrel clay roof tiles. So I have zero desire to ever put those on the building anytime right now. But, it's like a discussion with the ownership saying, okay, we can get the same look and it's made out of cement, but we're going to at least have the same look. So, there are options where, you don't need to go and get a 8-inch piece of marble. You can get a half-inch piece of marble and get the same effect from what the guest is seeing. So there's a lot of ways that you can do it affordably, and it makes more sense you look at the toilets. We're talking about toilets of all things. But you got one toilet that costs you, let's say, $300-400. You got another toilet that costs you $700-800. The $700-800 toilet's a one-piece toilet. You don't all have the nooks and crannies and all that around the toilet down on the bottom of the floor. It takes a maid, an extra 3-4 minutes to clean, but think about 3 or 4 minutes every single toilet, every single day for 10 years. That $700-800 toilet looks better. Plus, it's also easier to clean, and it's very attractive. And the guest looks down and says, oh, the toilet's clean. Some hotels, you go in the bathroom, you're like, I don't want to be in this bathroom.
So the devil is in the details, even when down to the toilets.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. So talk about, because we could talk forever about all of the fine points of the boutique world. Talk about where things are going, if you would, like trends, that sort of thing. What do you see? I think obviously the trend has been going in this direction for a while. Talking about the big brands, they all have their own, similar to what you all are doing, where they're saying, well, we'll give you the engine behind this and you'll have more control, right? So we'll do the marketing, help with the marketing and the back end systems and all that. So it's been going in that direction, even though you all offer a different kind of approach than, because you're still paying some sort of franchise fee or whatever, I'm sure. But talk about, what do you think are the trends in the boutique world these days?
You want me to start, Jenifer, or you?
You can go ahead and start.
Okay. So, as Jenifer discussed earlier, to me, it's unfortunately the trends right now are all going with the COVID, no touch, no this, no that. And I get it as far as having your TV you're able to change your channels on your TV with your own personal cell phone for the hotel TV. You got some of these rooms that are giving out tablets, that the tablets are running the lights and the drapes and the TV and room service, everything else that you walk in, and it's a sanitized tablet and it's been cleaned properly. Again, it goes back to my concern is, we don't want to be a Taco Bell. I think it was just talking about having a one person Taco Bell, one human, that's it. And the rest is going to be machines. And I personally hate that, because I think the whole point of the reason I got into this business myself is because I love the interaction with people. And, even today, I'm still involved here at the Inn St. John's because I love that part of it. And sometimes I just can't even imagine sitting in my house working at home, because the whole point of hospitality is creating a fun time for people. And 10 minutes ago, I was just out talking to these guests that are coming in and checking in for a wedding this weekend. And it's like, that's the part of me, but it's like they want to talk, I want to talk, and there was no concerns at all with COVID. But I mean, literally, we were in a hotel 3 weeks ago and not one single employee spoke to me.
Well, I think that the hotels are using that as an excuse. And it doesn't matter which size you are. They don't have enough employees. And I think they just use COVID as an excuse to, disengage from their customers and to carry on with like that touchless experience. You know how it used to be that you would go into a room and there's like all this information that, is spread out, talking about like your local, activities and things that you can do. Well, now the trend is to remove anything that people are touching in the rooms. And that's making it very difficult to carry that experience, that local sort of experience. And I think it just takes a little extra planning on your part. Like, as far as the hotel owner, it takes a little bit more, planning. You need to have the emails that are telling people about things, electronic correspondence, ways to touch the customers through text and things like that, to really let them know what's going on. And, hey, wow, we've got this event coming on this weekend, so that you're not losing that touch. You're just changing the touch.
Or maybe even an app that would do that.
Exactly.
Like a frictionless guest app.
Yep.
Sorry for the plug.
The one thing that drives me crazy though, Steve, is that, and I love wine. Okay. So, and the part of the thing about going out.
He is a sommelier. So
part of going out to a restaurant is opening that big wine book and going through and seeing the regions and seeing this, and it's just part of the whole thing. Now it's like, get your QR code, put it on your phone. I'm like,
crazy.
Really? I've got to buy a $200 bottle of wine based on my phone. I could just go to the wine store and go do this. So, and to me, that's the part that I hate, that we're going to lose that mechanism if we're not careful in this business. And a lot of the people that are traveling, now granted, 50% of probably the typical hotel is corporate travelers that are there for work, and they're checking in on Monday, check out on Thursday, they pay with their Amex card, they do express check-in, they do express check-out, they leave. And that's fine. And that guy, or woman, you need to make sure it's clean and safe and everything's working.
Right.
But then if you're there with your spouse or your kids, now it's an adventure and it's an experience. And it's like, Jenifer was at the O Hotel over her birthday, and the people by the pool found out it was her birthday. She's gluten-free. They went to a place across the street, got her this chocolate, did this, and this. And it's like, she still talks about it 10 years later.
Because that's amazing. It's an amazing way to touch, it's like it's so unexpected in today's day and age. And I think that actually creates a big opportunity for boutique properties, if they can find that way to touch the guests and just create an experience that they keep talking about years later.
So is that the positive trend then, that people crave unique experiences, whether it's place, it's service, it's curating those experiences off property, right? It's all of those things. And is that the hope that we're putting out?
I think that anytime you've got a challenge like we have today, that also creates an opportunity. And I think that boutique hotels actually have a greater ability to accommodate guests in these kind of unique ways. And so it is an opportunity for boutique hotel ownership to do something different. And I think that if people look at these challenges from a different perspective, they will come up with really great ways to stand out and just differentiate.
Yeah, that makes sense. Good. That's probably a good, fairly ending note. Although, Matt,
What else have we not talked about, or what do we got?
It's pretty good. I mean, the other thing on the list, if we wanted to cover it, if we have time, is just any insights or tips for innkeepers as well. But I leave that up to this panel of smart experts here to determine if we want to move forward on that one too.
Well, yeah, I mean, so we have a mix of listeners, I think, and I think the one common thread is kind of an independent lodging professional mindset, right? Whether it is the B&B or the inn or the boutique hotel property, whatever. Yeah. So, I mean, if you could say anything or give any advice with your vast, years of experience, what might you provide in terms of advice to listeners?
I think, Steve, that, like I was saying before, is I think there's a true difference between a boutique and a bed and breakfast and an inn. But at the same time, I think the bigger struggle is going to be for the larger hotels with this COVID, because like Jenifer said, they're going to use this as an excuse. I've been to some of the most beautiful bed and breakfasts in my life that I still remember, but those people aren't going to let this take over. They're going to still continue to allow that personal touch. And I think they're the ones that are actually going to have the easiest time during this COVID stage, because it's their house. Well, I don't want to say it's their house, but sometimes it is. But it's their family that's running that operation. And they know, if I own a bed and breakfast, COVID or no COVID, I'm not going to change how I treat you as a guest. But so I think that, in that regards, I think that the bed and breakfast properties probably have a easier time during this than the larger ones.
Good. Jenifer, what are your any tidbits of suggestion or advice?
I think that it's more important than ever for the small bed and breakfasts and the innkeepers to find ways to really differentiate themselves in their market, in their local market. I feel like there's such a push right now for local. And if you can find that niche, if you can find something that just is like, wow, you know what? I just went to this great hotel and they had this, it's like that'll spread the word more than any marketing you can do. I mean, it's like, it just really just so powerful. That would be my advice.
Good.
There's a place outside of Detroit called Chelsea. And during Christmas time, we went over there just to see what was going on. And it's, again, like the Galena. It's like Chelsea, the whole town is almost boutique. It's like, and you saw people coming in there and just buying stuff they probably didn't need, but they were trying to help the community during this time. But every store that you go into, it's a warm smile. It's a totally different shopping experience than going to the mall. And it's like, that's, in my mind, we don't want to be the shops at the mall. We don't want the big hotel flags and feel like you're shopping at the mall. We want to be the Galenas. We want to be the Chelsea, Michigans. I mean, you get that Plymouth, Michigan, the same thing. It's like there's so much excitement and just you see the locals reaching out to help the businesses. And it's like you just get this down home feel. And I think that's where you lose with the big hotels is you lose this down home feeling. And I think people want it. I do. I really think that I know the millennials have their corporate travelers used to chase the airline miles. And it's like you would stay at Hilton or you'd stay at Sheraton because you were going to get your airline miles, you were going to get your hotel points, blah, 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 blah. You ask millennials, they don't care about hotel points. They really don't. They want an experience. That's their thing.
And you can't manufacture the genuine attitude of town, of people, of independent shop owners or whatever. That can't be replicated the way a brand or a franchise tries to replicate at least the service. I mean, the service can be taught, but people know what's real and what's not, right? They can feel
Precisely.
it. Yeah.
And there is going back to what I said from the beginning, there are people that they cannot get financing unless it has a flag. And they want to be a hotel owner and that's their only option. Then I think that's where the franchises now are trying to help with that. They'll put like a lifestyle branding, soft brands and all that. And they do, some of them are great. Curio does a great job and Autograph by Marriott does a great job. And that allows you to get that independence feel to a point. And then it also makes your banker happy.
Yeah, I think that wraps it up. And this has been great. And this concludes this Frictionless Innkeeper podcast interview with Paul Wegert, who's the CEO, and Jenifer Neptune, who's the Chief Investment Officer and co-founder at Boutique Hotel Professionals, which, as you heard, is a management company specializing in boutique hotels, luxury travel experiences, and actually much, much more. And our podcast is brought to you by the Frictionless Guest App, which helps improve your guest day without adding more to your day. Learn more at frictionlessguest.com. And Jenifer, Paul, and Steve, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jenifer. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Matt.